Hey guys, welcome to the Build Your Own Cyber Lab at Home with Kyle Slawczyk. In this lecture I wanted to give you an overview of the course and how we're going to go about this journey of building your own lab. So first things first, I separated the course into three distinct sections, minus the introduction section, which is what you're in right now. But I did separate it into plan your lab, build your lab, and use your lab. And in each section we'll talk about a little bit more on how to build a lab and what you need to think about. So in the Plan Your Lab, we'll talk about some physical versus virtual lab and the pros and cons of each one. And then I'll give you some equipment needs. What do you need for your virtual lab? What software? And I'll give you some free options, which I'm a very big proponent of free. And then I'll give you some paid options because while free is great, there are some things that you are better when they're paid for. So we'll talk about both setups, and we'll talk about physical equipment needs and what do you need in order to run a physical lab. In the Build Your Lab section, we'll talk about virtualization, and I'm a big proponent of virtualization. Love virtualization. It's a great thing in the cyber world, used by a lot of cyber professionals to run operations or to even build your own lab, right? So we'll talk about virtualization. I'll give you a couple of options on that, and then we'll talk about physical setups. How do you build and build an infrastructure, a physical infrastructure for a lab? And then we'll get into something that's kind of new, and I think will really take off here in a little bit. But that's cloud-based labs, and how do you run a cyber lab in the cloud? And then in the Use Your Lab section, once you've got that infrastructure set up, we'll talk about what a typical lab looks like. What software do you need in it, in order to do, whether that is, you want to do pen testing, you want to do forensics, maybe you were just doing it for general IT knowledge. We'll talk about how to set that up and where to go from there. So that's the basic overview of the course. I hope you're excited because I am. And let's get started. Let's get into the next lesson. See you then.